One of these Oscar winners made so little money it wouldn't even cover catering for a Marvel movie. Another barely cracked the top 200 at the box office. And the worst one? Let's just say more people saw the Best Picture announcement screw-up than the actual film. Yeah, you know which one I'm talking about. This one was a huge hit with critics and took home 3 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. But in terms of box office, it barely made a dent. It had a limited theatrical release and went straight to Apple TV+, so the low numbers weren't exactly shocking. Still, a Best Picture winner pulling in just over $2 million? That's unheard of in modern Hollywood. Cimarron won Best Picture back when it was still called Outstanding Picture, but even with fewer films competing, it wasn't exactly a standout. At the time, it had a massive $1.5 million budget, but it didn't even make that back, falling short by over $100,000. For a Best Picture winner, it didn't leave much of a legacy. Just another middling Western that landed near the bottom of the box office in its year of release. For a film that won Best Picture, The Last Emperor struggled to get audiences into theaters. It cost $25 million to make, and after factoring in marketing, it barely broke even. The only reason its numbers climbed at all was because Oscar nominations gave it a second wind, pulling in curious moviegoers who wanted to see what the hype was about. It may have swept the Oscars, but it never really connected with audiences in a big way. Kathryn Bigelow's The Hurt Locker won Best Picture in 2008, following Jeremy Renner's Sergeant William James and his bomb disposal team during the Iraq War. The movie focused on the psychological toll of war, showing the stress and trauma these soldiers faced while disarming explosives in the field. But despite all the critical praise, it barely made an impact at the box office. It pulled in less than a third of what the previous year's Best Picture winner made, even with a low budget. Barry Jenkins' Moonlight tells the life story of a young black man growing up in Miami with an abusive, drug-addicted mother. It was a powerful story, but it had a rough road to the Oscars. The biggest moment came when La La Land was mistakenly announced as the winner, one of the most awkward Oscar moments of all time. But even after getting the award, Moonlight struggled financially. With a tiny $1.5 million budget, it was a success in that sense, but compared to other Best Picture winners, it earned one of the lowest box office totals ever. This one had a low budget, so financially speaking, it was never going to be a disaster. But compared to the biggest films of 1981, it barely made a dent. Domestically, it was one of the lowest-grossing movies of the year, and even with global earnings, it just barely cracked the top 10. For a film that won Best Picture, it was an odd one. People remember the slow-motion running and the iconic Vangelis score, but at the time, it never really felt like a box office juggernaut. Michael Keaton plays a washed-up actor trying to prove he's more than just a former superhero. The movie had a flashy one-take style, a strong cast, Edward Norton, Naomi Watts, Emma Stone, but it never really clicked with audiences. Even after scoring multiple Oscar nominations, it struggled to gain traction at the box office. The competition that year was The Imitation Game, American Sniper, and The Theory of Everything, films with broader appeal. But Birdman still walked away with 4 Oscars, including Best Picture. One of the most controversial Best Picture winners ever. It beat Brokeback Mountain, a film that had swept most of the major awards leading up to the Oscars. Many believe it won due to industry politics rather than quality. It was profitable thanks to a low budget, but in the years since, it's mostly faded into obscurity. Meanwhile, Brokeback Mountain has only grown in reputation. A black-and-white silent film winning Best Picture in 2011? That alone made the artist feel like pure Oscar bait. It told the story of a silent film star struggling with the rise of talkies, a love letter to classic Hollywood. Critics ate it up, but audiences, not so much. It barely made a dent at the box office, ranking 169th out of 200 films that year. Despite its Oscar win, the artist was never widely embraced. Most moviegoers just didn't care. This one is a brutal crime thriller about stolen drug money, a relentless hitman, and a sheriff watching the violence unfold. It was critically acclaimed and won multiple Oscars, including Best Picture, but it wasn't a commercial juggernaut. That year, plenty of movies were pushing the billion-dollar mark, while Cohen's movie only brought in a fraction of that.